This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Oh, yeah. Hello there, everybody. Andrew, I'm going to put you over here so I can face you. High five. There you go. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. Been sick the last 2 days.
So
I'm a little recovering. Went to work today, but I'm not cleaning toilets, so it's all good.
I just took my last round of medicine from strep throat. So
oh God, yeah. My son was ill all last week, and I thought I had a higher midichlorian count. I was like hugging him and taking him to school or whatever, making him food, but I got what he got. Not as bad. I just got the cold, cold symptoms, but he was out the whole week. Fever and headaches and achy body, but sucks when our kids are ill.
Yep.
But how's everybody in your household?
Everybody's good. Everybody got sick. So everybody's finally well. I was the last one to get it.
Oh no.
But they all abandoned me for the weekend, so it's just me here tonight.
Yeah, I saw you guys yesterday. You had a little bit of some technical difficulties, but I saw your discussion with Marisha.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching it, jotting down some notes. I know we're going to talk about a lot of the same stuff, but you brought out some very interesting points that I wanted to kind of get to discussing. Chapter 18 and 19 of the Mandalorian. Let's say hello to everyone in the chat. Hello, everyone in the chat. We got our usual. Look, we've got some folks that we haven't seen in a while. 2Med2, How you doing? We're going to be recording with him and my pal, Mr. Rifen. We're going to be talking about Solo. Brad and I never did a Star Wars story discussion. Okay. And I know the movie's a little on the older side, but I still wanted to get some thoughts out. And 2Med and my pal, Mr. Rifen, we're going to chat a little bit about Solo. So we'll see how that goes.
It's always interesting to revisit things like that. So
yeah, absolutely. I think I've got my thoughts on it. I went to go see it in the theater, and I know a lot of people missed it in the theater. Once they saw it in the theater, I guess people were like, or once they saw it streaming, people were upset at themselves that they didn't see it in the theater. I mean, Star Wars belongs in the theater. It's such a great experience on the big screen. I don't know what people are doing. But I know it's not without its controversy. So we'll chat about that a little bit. Speaking of revisiting, this next Thursday when we drop a new episode of the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast, I sat down with one of our patrons, Melanie Marquita, and she's been making her rounds too on the Red 5 network, which is really nice to see. We went back and did a rewatch of the Buck Rogers series on Tubi. And it was a very nostalgic trip for us because it's one of those science fiction television shows from the late 70s, early 80s that we really liked. You remember that one?
Yeah. Yeah, I've watched some of that. It's not a series I've watched all of.
Yeah.
But I've caught episodes.
Cool.
So that I'm surprised. Who owns it? Like, why hasn't it come back? Why have they not done another?
Yeah, I was doing some research, and apparently the George Clooney's studio was getting ready to do something, to do a reboot, and the supposed owners of the IP sent them a cease and desist. Okay. And said, you don't have the rights to do it. So it's caught up in litigation. One side says, yes, we do have the rights. The other side said no. So it'll probably be a while before we really see any new Buck Rogers or anything from that IP. But I really would like to see it because Gil Gerard was really cool. Buck Rogers, obviously the character, stems a little longer than what we know from the Buck Rogers side. Obviously, Buck Rogers is an older character than what we see in that series from 79, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good bit. I mean, it was an early radio series, so
yeah, absolutely. But what is going on over at Coruscant Radio Underground and the science fiction area? I know you guys, sometimes I pop up and I see that you're what service do you use?
Melon.
It'll say I just went live on Melon. I'm like, you did? Hold on a second. Let me get over. What are you guys doing?
Right now, I mean, there's just a lot of shows on that we're covering, but we're still working on some series. We've had a little trouble getting some of the big things we've been wanting to do for the science fiction area scheduled, but we're working on it. We're still working on like a 5-episode series covering the Muppets.
Okay, yeah.
That will overlap into Coruscant Radio Underground because of the Creature Shop's work on Star Wars.
Right.
So we're going to do a lot of that kind of stuff. And there's the Jim Henson Boyhood Home Museum is here in Mississippi, and we're going to try to go record. Yeah, he's from Leland, Mississippi, up in the Delta. And so we're going to, they have a few of the puppets there, but it's mostly, it's his home where he was born. And so we're going to go up and try to record an episode there at that facility.
That would be awesome.
So other than that, we're just really trying to push more stuff over on our YouTube, shorter things like 10, 15-minute episodes over on YouTube.
That's cool. That is, that's really cool. I love going to locations and recording because it's got obviously a different feel than just sitting in your, in your geek room.
Right.
We're going to do it for C2E2. I know I'm going to meet a couple of people that are local and some followers of the Scarif podcast that I didn't know were local. They started posting some stuff about C2E2 at the end of March. So we should be doing some, I think every podcast should experiment with doing some live recordings because it is a lot of fun. And obviously, you know how we started, Brad and I Star Wars celebration here in Chicago. I went to town, man, just talked to as many people as I could and just got some, feels and takes. And it's a really great exercise, especially if you're kind of on the shy side. I know I had kind of commissioned Megan to do some interviews at Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim, but she was too shy. Yeah. Just like the song says, but it's kind of fun to just go up to a complete stranger. And it's funny though, because they're not really complete strangers. They're there the same reason you are, celebrating something that you both love. So it's kind of cool. I encourage everybody, just to go out there if you do have kind of a podcast or a show, just to get some content out there. And one day, I posted this today, one day I'm going to meet you guys at Dragon Con, I swear.
Yep, you need to. We need a whole bunch of people to come. That one's a fun one.
Yeah. But I was going to say, you guys were planning the Muppets series for a while now, right?
Yeah, I was going to do it at the end of last year, and then David got tied up with work. And wasn't able to come on consistently for a little bit. And since we got into the new year, Marisha and I've been running different directions. January and February are usually my slowest work months. But January and February this year were busier than any month I had last year.
Yeah.
So, this business is so fickle. I have to take the work when I can get it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. We got a wonderful conversation going on in the chat, spurring from the Buck Rogers. Everybody's calling everybody old, but Tina is right. We are all young at heart. Thank you very much for that, Tina. Always an inspiration in the chat. Thank you so much. We got some people coming in too, a nice group. But you want to talk some Mandalorian?
Yeah.
let's get started. And I want to encourage anyone in the chat that does have some questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat, and we'll pop it on screen, and we'll chat about it. But in the meantime, so chapter 18 of The Mandalorian, which was the chapter, the episode that aired last week,
Right.
The Mines of Mandalore. That was obviously we waited a week for kind of a conclusion to that first episode. But The Mines of Mandalore, let's go through that a little bit. What overall, what did you think of that episode?
Oh, that's a fantastic episode. That's one of the best episodes of the show we've gotten.
Okay. What makes you give it so many high marks?
I think we had a couple of good fight scenes. We got some new, we got some look at some new creatures. I'm all about creatures. They don't always. We've had some big creatures in the Mandalorian.
Sure.
They haven't done a lot of. We had some smaller creatures involved. I don't know what the thing was that captures Din, but incredibly cool creation. And we got some big sweeping landscape shots of Mandalore, which was really cool. I love big shots like that. When you go back to the original trilogy, or even things like Lord of the Rings, these big sweeping vistas.
Yeah.
And I love shots like that. So that had there was some of that. And of course, the reveal of the mythosaur is
that's big.
That's real big.
Absolutely. So one of the things you had mentioned, that creature, and I was doing a little research, and it turns out that ILM veteran Phil Tippett was all over that that design. And when I see creatures, having been obviously a Star Wars fan, all of us, we kind of put these creatures like at top of the mind here. There are certain designs that are, this creature was way out there. It was very different. It was even on the creepy side. It was like half robot, half insect or something, but it was very, it was such a genius design, and it really stood out from the rest of the episode. And I really loved that about it.
Yeah. It reminded me of some other stuff. I know you watched the Lost in Space series, the new one. And it's very reminiscent of the robots there.
Absolutely. I want to single out Crystal Kyber is in the chat. Thank you very much for stopping by. I dragged you in here. I know we're going to talk a little bit about last week's episode and this week's episode. I'm seeing a lot of back and forth on not only last week's episode, but this week's episode too. And we'll get to that. But there doesn't seem to be like a middle ground. People either really love it or really hate it. And I do want to get into a little bit of that polarity. But I wanted to mention to you the relationship between Din Djarin and Bo-Katan in last week's episode 18 was, I think it was a high point for me, because, I think before the season started, everybody was wondering if there were going to be adversaries, or are they going to be against each other because Din Djarin's got the Darksaber. But it didn't start out that way. And I think one of the things that I really loved about their relationship in these two episodes, and mostly last week's episode, was it seemed like Din Djarin's faith in the creed, in his being a Mandalorian, really inspired Bo-Katan to kind of like maybe take that next step or take that leap of faith. Even towards the end, when she was reading the inscription in down in the mine there, she was almost being like mocking, reading it, but kind of like not believing it. And obviously, we know what happens. But I found that kind of cool and refreshing. What do you think about that?
I love that. Katie Sackhoff is an incredible actress. Um,
Yeah.
and of course, she's all excited about this recent episode where she got to act with the helmet on.
Right.
She's really excited about that. But she did so much. She conveyed so much with just facial expressions during those scenes because she's mocking this religion. Now she grew up in this religion. She took the creed as a child, and she's saying, "Oh, it meant nothing," and
Right.
she's just ready to write it off. But the moment that Den starts reciting the creed,
Sure.
it awakens something in her.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, she basically lost everything. And, you can kind of tell when Din Djarin visits her in that first episode and she's like, yeah, take that dark saber, wave it around. They'll follow you, whatever. I mean, she was bitter.
Yeah, she's given up.
Yeah. And I think slowly but surely, and don't call me Shirley, but the process of what Din Djarin is there for, to be cleansed, to be what do you call it, redeemed. She's starting to get a taste of what that is, and seeing Din Djarin's commitment, I think, kind of wakens up something in her. You're right.
Yeah, so I don't know where they're headed with what their relationship is. I'm glad they seem to be traveling at least a parallel path. They're not adversaries at this point, and I don't think they're
Yeah.
gonna be. There's a lot of directions they can go with that relationship. I have no idea what they're gonna do, but
Sure.
I really like the Bo-Katan character. Of course, we've had that character longer than we've had Din Djarin. Um, so there's a lot of attachment to that character because we've had that character. That character's been a cool character for a long time.
Oh yeah, from the get-go, I would say.
Yeah.
Dave's dimension has a question. Do you think she'll keep the helmet on from now on? And that's kind of a good question. I'm not too thrilled about the whole religious aspect of just keeping on the helmet. To me, it, like, in real world, it seems very impractical. I mean, when Din Djarin was laying on the side of the water there and the stairs,
Yeah.
he comes to and he coughs, and
Right.
it seems a little impractical.
Well, and I think what we'll see over time is we're going to, if the story is the uniting of the Mandalorians and the restoring of Mandalore and all this, there has to be some sort of compromise somewhere along the way.
Sure. Yeah.
And, Bo-Katan has been adamant that this group is a cult, even though they're practicing the old ways. A lot of times a cult is just a group that decided to add things to something. They took the religion and then they took it to an extreme and added things. And I think that's what they are. They're zealots that have added things. And I'm wondering if the helmet thing is, they haven't told us clearly whether that's an addition. It's not part of the creed.
Mm.
That's the thing that I find interesting. Although I don't know, have we 100% for sure heard anyone utter the last phrase of the creed? It's gotten cut off both times we've heard someone reciting it.
Oh, which part? What do you mean?
Well, the first time that they're reciting it, I think they get to the end. The kid doesn't have a chance to repeat it before the
Oh yeah, that alligator.
attacks, and
Right.
then it's Den saying what we assume is the last words. He plummets to the bottom of the the aquifer there. So
Yeah, and I think you mentioned in one of your shows, or I read it somewhere, but I didn't pick up on that, and I think that's a good catch, to see what the rest of the words are.
And we may have gotten the whole creed, but I
Yeah.
think the thing that's important here is that the thing of note is that the thing with the helmet is not it's not really part of the creed.
Yeah. Yes. I would have to say yes. I wanted to get to something that you said in your show, but first I did want to mention, one of the things that was very prominent, there was a discussion that Bo-Katan was having with Din Djarin as they were walking to the towards the bottom of the mines there, getting to the water. The fact that, and you mentioned it just earlier, the fact that Bo-Katan would love to see the Mandalorian people unite. She's tired of the fighting. She's tired of the separation. And to me, it kind of was foreshadowing that we're going to get to that point at some point during the series, whether it's this season or at least the start of this season. But and obviously, since she's starting to see that the legend of the mythosaur is not just folklore and stories, that there's an eye down there and it belongs to a mythosaur.
Right.
So what do you think of that aspect? Do you think we're going to see the the rise of new Mandalore? Are we going to get it this weekend, this season?
No, I think we continue along that path, but when you hear Dave Filoni talk about this, or Jon Favreau rather, he talks about, well, we haven't really planned the end. And a lot of people got down on that. Well, you haven't planned it out. I'm sure they have some idea of what the end game is. They're just not looking to end this show anytime soon.
Right.
Is what I took from that. So I think that the restoration of Mandalore, and I think Mandalore can be a really cool big player in the galaxy eventually. So, but I think that's probably the end game, or at least part of the end game. And I don't think we're going to see that fully happen for a while.
Sure. Yeah. Was this the episode? No, the first episode was an episode that we see more of what's her name? Sedaris. This character.
Amy Sedaris.
Pelimoto. Right. But we get to finally see the ruins of Mandalore. And I think you mentioned some really great shots at the beginning of this episode where we see some really nice wide shots when they land. Obviously, we've got R5D4. Do you think Pelimoto is Melipoto? Yeah. Do you think she's fibbing about R5D4 and being he's the hero that nobody thought we knew?
That character is just wild. That scene was the only thing that felt off about this episode. I don't even mind the scene, but it felt like that scene belonged in the first episode, along with the rest of the setup.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the first episode was almost like a half-hour recap of stuff.
And that's why I kind of felt like this kind of went back with that. It was kind of setting us on this course. So I don't know. I sort of feel like they sort of like film all this and then try to figure out where to split it later. It's almost the way it feels sometimes.
I mean, if you see the first 3 episodes of this season, you can definitely you can tell that they should have cut this over here. I mean, I think it would have worked better if the Dr. Pershing was a solo episode on its own as the number 3 episode, and just entitle it Dr. Pershing. Mm-hmm. And then do I mean, I know this last episode was bookended with Mando and Bo stuff, which was phenomenal. We'll get to it. But I think structure wise, it does seem a little off. And I know a lot of people had issues with that. I think I don't know if I got used to it because we saw that in Book of Boba Fett, or I don't know. I don't know why. It didn't bother me as much as a lot of people.
Yeah. There is one other scene that I really wanted to mention in the mines. When Din and Bo are walking to the pool, they're talking about her father.
Yes.
And because this whole thing has kind of been them developing a mutual respect for one another. She's looking at him as a member of a cult. He's looking at her as an apostate. And they're finding some middle ground in this episode. It's one of the things I really like about it. And he finds that moment when she talks about her father dying to protect Mandalore.
Right.
So he he now has a very different look at her. He's looked at her as almost not a Mandalorian up until that moment.
Yes.
I really think that's him giving a nod that he is recognizing her as a Mandalorian.
Yeah, and obviously by the end of this week's episode, you know, everybody is hunky dory, because everybody has been, you know, bathed in the waters of Mandalore. But
Well, everybody except Paz Vizsla.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was very subtle, though. I mean, I noticed obviously that he was the only one that didn't really come up to Bo and Din Djarin and give him a pat on the back. We're skipping to episode 19 here, but before we get to that, you had mentioned something in your show recently that you have felt that the armorer was going to play a larger role as far as an adversary for these characters. Did you want to tease that out a little bit? And I wanted to see if we can get some chat discussion going on. I mean, I think you did anything, you did everything except call her a bad guy. And I kind of see where that's coming from, because she is the leader of this so-called cult, which, you know, when you think of the word cult, it always has a negative connotation. It's manipulative, it's controlling. It makes you, you know, it makes people do what they don't want to do otherwise. So I can kind of see your line of thinking as far as her being kind of a, you know, not a very good person. But let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think the real thing, I've always kind of looked at them as a potential adversary. This is at the very least, an offshoot of the group that followed Darth Maul.
Yes.
And she wears horns on her helmet that are reminiscent of the ones that they wore under Maul. Like, I mean, to me, that's automatically telegraphing that she's at least to be questioned.
Right.
You know, there were a lot of theories that she was a specific Mandalorian that we had seen. There were a couple different characters that she potentially was, but since Bo-Katan doesn't immediately recognize her as one of those characters, then I suppose those theories are out the window. And those are theories people have had for several years now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, these shows really make me want to go back and watch, you know, some of the Clone Wars, especially, you know, the Mandalore arc with Darth Maul. Some really powerful stuff there, especially, you know, because we see Bo-Katan's sister get killed in that arc. Really, really well written. You know, I posted something earlier about it was a kind of a hot take. I said I think I'm enjoying Bad Batch a little bit more than Mandalorian.
Enjoying Bad Batch. I'm one episode short of catching up. I was about 4 episodes behind on it.
Yeah, you know, it's funny for somebody that didn't. I wasn't too crazy with the advent of having a Bad Batch series after they, you know, popped up in those Clone Wars episodes, whatever. But I got to tell you, man, the Bad Batch, you know, the characters have really grown on me, and I think the stories are well written. I feel they've got some depth and emotion to them that sometimes I don't see as much of that in the live action. But, you know, I mean, Clone Wars has always done that. I mean, the animation, Star Wars animation really has always done that for me, as far as just the emotion, I don't know, the spirit of hope. We had, I think we had a discussion on Twitter regarding the fact that some people don't see the Mandalorian as hopeful, or at least having the hope that that Star Wars is used to. But I think we're in a very interesting place time-wise. And I guess we can jump into that now. You know, the whole New Republic, the Empire 2.0, or all things leading to you know, the First Order, et cetera, et cetera. Let's start talking about episode 19, the Convert. I think you know, obviously we have seen some comments on Twitter regarding the fact that story wise their structure was a little disjointed. We've got some bookends of really great stuff with a Dr. Pershing story like smack in the middle. People were confused. I understand, but again, this shows me that, like you said, they wrote this series and didn't know where to separate them. I think the head end of episode 19 probably should have gone in last week's episode. I think it would have been a lot more impactful because you get some really great visuals. What'd you think of that first scene before the title card?
Oh, the first scene's incredible. The lead up to the title card is some of the best ship action we've had in any of these shows so far, and it's really up there with what you would expect to see in a movie.
Yeah.
Now, as far as that scene, like, yeah, I've seen a lot of people say it should have been the tail end of last week. And I think I argued on our show that I would have just opened this up. We did the flashback to show that this was going to be about Pershing. Like, we should have just opened the episode up with Pershing and then done the whole Mandalorian chunk at the end of the episode so that you finish the episode with that, all that really greatness of that to end with, to launch you into next week. But, you know, at the end of the day, it didn't bother me that much, but I do know that it did bother a lot of people.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know why it didn't bother me. I think maybe you know, it's funny. I saw some comments that people were bored with the Dr. Pershing stuff. I don't think I was bored, and I think that's probably why it didn't bother me as much. I found the characters well acted. What's her name? Katie. What's her name? And Dr. Pershing. I think, you know, at this point, you know, the stuff going back to, I mean, Coruscant looked fabulous. It looked phenomenal. I know you guys, you and Marisha were talking about physics in Star Wars when they jumped off of the train, but that's neither here nor there.
You know, that to me, that's like that. If that's my one complaint about an episode, that's a nitpick.
Right. Exactly.
Like I'm looking for something to complain about at that point. Like,
yeah. So, I want to talk briefly about, I want to stay in the dogfight area because I know people in the chat are, skipping ahead, but okay. So Coruscant was beautiful. Yes. Tina. It looked really nice. But getting back to the dogfight, you know, since the Book of Boba Fett and a little bit of, Obi-Wan, the volume technology, the stagecraft stuff has been, obviously a revolution in filmmaking and especially in television. But for me, there are certain shots that I can tell that were either don't look right or weren't planned right. And there is a shot, getting back to the Book of Boba Fett, there's one shot in the Mando episodes of the Book of Boba Fett where they used the volume technology perfectly. And I think it's because it was planned. Structurally, it was planned. Camera work wise, it was planned. It's where he goes into the elevator, he goes down a level, you see all the stuff that's happening in the elevator window. He comes out, he delivers the bounty. It's that guy's head, slams it on the table. You know, the camera goes around, he does his little dialogue with the characters that are, you know, kind of like the Godfather table there, and then he leaves, he goes back into the hallway, goes back to the elevator and goes up. That's all stagecraft. That's all stuff that was planned. And again, the workflow of that technology is a little on the backward side because we saw what do you call it, the writer of Andor talking about that in one of the behind the scenes stuff. You know, they have to do the special effects first before shooting.
Right.
And obviously the workflow is a little different in traditional filmmaking, where you have to do the shooting in front of a green screen, et cetera, and then you add the effects. So, from a behind the scenes point of view, it is kind of a different way of thinking about it. But the dog fights, there are little things in there that you can tell were so well planned out. There's a shot towards the beginning after they eliminate the TIE fighters, which they are my favorite variant, by the way, the TIE interceptors. There's a shot of the scope on the N1, and Din Djarin notices that there's like dark smoke off to the horizon. So the camera tilts up and rack focuses from the foreground to the far away scene where you can see it. And that's all a single shot. There was no compositing in there. You can see dirt on the windshield. I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those sequences that George would be really proud of, faster and more intense. But again, it's an aspect of the volume and shooting in that environment that if you don't plan it right, then it's going to look kind of weird. And I was talking to Yoshi about it, who obviously he's worked on The Rise of Skywalker. We were talking about that technology. And yeah, directors have to plan it out. Were there any visual sequences in that first dogfight, before we get into Pershing stuff, that you found impressive?
I mean, I think that everything they did with the ships, the whole dogfight, is very impressive overall. I'm really like I know that. So the volume technology is really kind of gets mixed reviews. I know that sometimes you have issues with it. I think the trade-off, though, is that our actors are acting in environment.
Right.
And so you trade off, like when you go back and look at the prequels, I mean, it's real easy to look at the prequels. It's one of the first big fully CGI films, and our
Sure.
actors were acting against nothing.
Right.
They don't feel immersed. I mean, sometimes the character they're talking to is not even there.
Right.
And so this really changes that. And so, like, I feel like sometimes where you may trade off a shot that would have been better in a practical set a little bit, you do get this. I feel like the actors are acting better against the volume instead of a green screen.
Sure. Yeah. And obviously I'm not an actor in front of a green screen, but I would expect an actor to act like he's talking to a giant whatever. But I guess, obviously it does help if you're actually looking at something. You get, it's that next level.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. Yeah,
But
for sure.
I really appreciated the detail on the ships. Like nothing looks like even with the big, when you see all of the TIE interceptors coming in at once, that could have
Yeah.
easily gone real bad, but it looks real. Like it was really, really well executed.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love seeing the TIE bombers. The ships
Yeah,
were just great.
we got two ships that were underused previously in live action.
Yeah.
With the bombers and the interceptors.
And Bo-Katan's ship looks amazing.
It does.
Straight from animation. This is probably the first time we really get to see it in action. Really well done. The sequence was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I encourage I think I might have to just make a 9-minute clip of just that dogs fight, because it was phenomenal.
Yeah. I like the TIE interceptor shot. It was so reminiscent of the shot from the battle scene in Return of the Jedi, where they basically fly into the cloud of TIE fighters.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So Dr. Penn Pershing, we get to see him, and the clip that goes on before the episode, previously seen on, we get to see, we get to be reminded, I guess, of Pershing's role and everything. But there's still a mystery as to what he has been doing now that the Empire is gone. And obviously his research, he wants to continue his research. Um, his research into cloning, we see him talking to, who's he talking to? An audience of New Republic representatives or something,
Yeah,
or what?
just dignitaries, or I don't
Right,
know.
yeah. They paid money to see his TED Talk,
Looked like
something
it.
like that.
Yeah.
But I I think it's interesting that they threw in a little bit of the arrogance of some of the community around him, kind of the rich, wealthy, um, Coruscant residents that, there's one line that somebody said, New Republic, Empire, Alliance. I can't tell the difference.
Yeah. Well, the
So
interesting thing about that character, he talks briefly about how he was almost drafted to fight for the Empire. And it's
yeah,
like, so you have this, this scene where you've got Pershing, an Imperial scientist, who's being punished. He's going through the amnesty program and he can't just be a normal citizen, right?
right.
But you have this other guy that's wealthy, that was an Imperial loyalist, and he just gets to keep being himself.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's and having the conversation about cloning in the same place in the opera hall where Palpatine talked about
Right.
cheating death was brilliant.
Yeah. That was really nice. A nice touch. And like I said, I think I loved seeing Coruscant, coming back to that environment. Same steps, really nice touch. I loved that we got to see the tip of the mountain there.
Mhm.
Um, there was an episode in Clone Wars. I forgot what the name of the episode was, but we get to see, the only place that the actual, planet surface is visible on the city planet. So that was kind of cool. Um, yeah, a couple of other nods to the great design of Ralph McQuarrie in and around that environment. So very cool. So we've established that the story structure really, this Pershing story right in the middle of a Mando episode really didn't bother us. And for me, like I said, it didn't bother me that much because I found the story kind of compelling. I wanted to see, what they wanted, what they were going to do next. I don't know if I trusted what's her name at the beginning, but she gave me a good, I don't know, she gave me a good reason to maybe at least open up, and I think that was Dr. Pershing's, first mistake, obviously. But they made a good point of establishing, with the interrogation droid the first time around, he's like fine doing whatever he's doing.
Mhm.
But then he gets infected. I don't want to say infected. He gets convinced that maybe he should be doing more, and he does get kind of infected with an idea of maybe he wants to continue his research. And he goes in that second time. The droid asks him, "Do you feel any resentment towards any New Republic individuals or representatives?" And he kind of hesitates, and you can see the wheels turning. He definitely does, admittedly or not. But it's a really interesting turning point in what he wants to accomplish after that.
Yeah.
What do you think of his motivations there?
It's interesting. I mean, obviously he has strong motivations to pursue the things that he's doing. But as far as cloning is outlawed. And so, I mean, at this point, we have to assume that that was done on moral grounds. Um, and he's still willing to push forward. He gives the line about, I meant my research for good and it was used for bad. And it's like, but you're still willing to break the rules
Yeah,
to do it. So I do think that I think that he just wants to exist and just do his science. I don't think he's setting out to be a villain. but he's still at the end of the day willing to do whatever he has to do, within the rules or not.
Yeah, and he's convinced. Obviously we see a little setup that his mother had heart issues.
Mhm.
You know, it's funny. At first, I thought they were going to start introducing the fact that he was a lost brother of Leia, because we know that Leia's mother also had heart issues. I don't know if that is. I don't know if that's canon though, but I remember reading in some book that Brea had a artificial heart.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, people are not going to like this. Leia's brother? No way. But I know a lot of people had issues with the pacing of this story. A lot of people were calling it Andor-esque, as if that was a 4-letter word. I'm like, why is it Andor-esque? Because it has cubicles? No.
You know, I think it slows down. It does sort of does the spy thriller kind of thing. It's different. It's lighter than Andor. It stays a
Yeah.
little more tonally like the Mandalorian, but it's
Sure.
the scene itself, or the chunk of the episode itself, feels more like something out of Andor. And I don't think that's a bad thing,
Right.
at all. I think that this setup was very necessary.
Yes. I think what is a 4-letter word, I think, to me, is filler episode. I don't think I did see a lot of people saying, oh, this, I didn't understand any of this, but I think it does, on both ends, the Mando stuff with Bo-Katan and obviously Dr. Pershing stuff. I think it does kind of set up a lot of things that need to be said when it comes to this series. It's interesting. I think I pose this question. I'll pose it to you. Do you think that because of the story structure, do you think that perhaps maybe a Star Wars anthology show might have worked out better for something like this, where they can just tell whatever story they want to kind of set up what this era is all about? I mean, they can do stories about Pershing, they can do stories about Bo-Katan, they can do stories about Gideon. They can kind of jump all over the place and not worry about people saying, well, this is the Mandalorian show, where's the Mandalorian?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I like the idea myself. I think that's a great idea as a way to tell these stories so that you don't have to tell them in the middle, because when these seasons are so short. And I think
Yeah.
that's what really gets people is, this took 1/8 of the entire season away from our main character. At the same time, Star Wars is so character driven. I don't know how people would react to an anthology series.
Yeah.
I
But
think,
we have one fan that would love an anthology series.
yeah, no, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. I'll call Kathy Kennedy. Get around that right now. From the tales of a galaxy far, far away. I think that would be great. Yeah. What else about Pershing? I know we have the conclusion of this episode, but I think the actors were both well received, and I think Dr. Pershing, I think he did fairly well. A lot of times we see actors that are kind of I don't want to say phoning it in, but I think they really they hit a home run on even the Pershing stuff. I think they carried the scenes well. But I mean, surprise, surprise, obviously. Dr. Pershing gets betrayed, and we don't know who she's working for. Is it Gideon? Is it a I don't know.
Well,
And you mentioned something in your show which I found very interesting, and I really didn't think about it until I heard it from you guys. You talked about Operation Cinder.
Yeah.
And
I'm really proud of that theory. I hadn't heard anybody else say that one.
Yeah, and going forward, I do, now that I know about, now that I've heard it from you, I'm really wondering why they haven't really touched on that.
Yeah, and maybe that's where we're headed. That we're 8-9 years past the time that would have happened. Or no, I guess Battle of Jakku is 4 years after, or 2.
I think it was even longer. I thought it was
Is it
longer
longer?
than, yeah.
Okay. Well, have we had the Battle of Jakku yet? Surely this is after the Battle of Jakku. Either way, I would think we would be on the tail end of, if Battle of Jakku. I can't remember when. I've gotten myself turned around on when that happened.
Right.
But assuming it's already happened, then Operation Cinder has been well underway. But I mean, Operation Cinder is, it's compared in the books to a chess match and wiping the board.
Right.
We're taking people that know too many things that aren't part of the next phase off the board. We got to get rid of them. We can't have those people out there. And they've set Elia Kane up within the amnesty program to keep people who know stuff from getting out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of Operation Cinder. And I think that the other side of that is, I think we have to question whether Gideon's even alive.
Yeah, somebody mentioned, one of the characters mentioned that he was taken prisoner. Somebody said no, he escaped. So
yeah, and then someone else says, no, I heard he was sent to a mine flick.
Right.
And then we see that happen.
Yeah.
And so you go, okay, like there could be truth in that.
Sure.
He could have been one of the pieces that needed to be wiped off the board.
Yeah. Although I think if they did it off camera and he has been wiped out, it would be a great disservice to the character, especially.
But we've already seen him defeated, though. It's kind of my thing. We saw him defeated. We saw him lose. So wiping, whether we stick him in a prison or kill him, I don't know if it matters much.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm going to go with he's probably escaped and we're probably not done with the character. But I thought that conversation opened some interesting possibilities up that he may already be gone.
Right. Absolutely. Each season of The Mandalorian ended with a bit of a tease. A new character pops in. A known character pops in. We have seen that ever since. I think there's some theories floating around. Obviously, who do you think we'll see at the end of this season? At the very last episode.
So it's very likely going to be either Thrawn, who I think we go a long ways towards setting up in this episode. I think the comment about, that's a lot of fighters for a warlord.
Right.
I don't think it's a warlord. I think it's Thrawn. The other side of that is, so it could be Thrawn. We could actually see Thrawn in this. I think that would be the coolest part. The other side is it's going to be at least a member of the Rebels crew that we haven't seen yet, or maybe even the whole group, because they've all been cast. We're hurtling very rapidly towards that Ahsoka series. Right. I think that's where we're going to leave off, is with a setup for that. So I don't know who we see.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be it'll be Thrawn.
I think like seeing the Rebels crew would be amazing, but I don't think that for me, seeing Thrawn would be a bigger moment.
Yeah, I think the Rebels crew will probably be left for the Ahsoka show.
Yeah.
And obviously there is some interconnectivity. I think these two shows are going to start to crisscross.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely, I think Thrawn is ready to go. That would be a pretty interesting reveal. And are you ready to explain to regular Star Wars fans that have no idea who Thrawn is, never read the books or seen the Rebels show? I'm ready.
Oh, I'm ready. I'll show them all the books they need to read too. I mean, Thrawn is like outside of the original trilogy.
Yeah.
You know, when all we had was 3 movies, like there was in particular one book character that was larger than life, and it was Thrawn.
Yeah.
And yeah, that has been one of the biggest outside of our original cast. That has been one of the biggest characters for a very long time now. I mean, that's the original Star Wars Legends, not what's now the expanded universe novels.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see him in live action.
Absolutely. Mark your calendars, March 18th. What time is it? It's about 8:00 Central Time, 9:00 Eastern. We are saying that it's going to be Thrawn. So come back at the end of the series when that happens and play this clip. Told you so. What's interesting, and we'll wrap things up here unless the chat has any quick questions for us, but we have the original trilogy. We know what happens in the prequels. We know what happens in the sequels. But we're getting almost another I don't know, almost another trilogy in the middle here that that is going to be exploring expanded universe material that I don't know if it helps set up sequel trilogy events, but I don't think that the people behind the scenes had Thrawn on their bingo card when they started writing The Force Awakens. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this kind of plays together.
Yeah. And I mean, eventually, I mean, obviously, we're still 20 years out from the sequel trilogy, but it's like the First Order is going to pop in next week. We're still a ways off, but
sure, yeah,
we're definitely headed that direction. And, my hope for that is that Filoni and Favreau can do what Filoni has been doing for a long time now and elevating the films.
Sure. Yeah. That's true.
And also the other thing about some of this stuff we're dealing with cloning, we could be fixing to take a page out. Obviously we can't do Heir to the Empire exactly as it was Timothy Zahn wrote it, but we're opening the door to potentially bring a lot of those elements into this series and the Ahsoka series and whatever other series are playing in this time frame.
Yeah, and I think that's exciting to be able to bring that stuff in. I think Thrawn, the Thrawn trilogy, even I think both incarnations of the Thrawn trilogy have been beloved by fans. Expanded universe, and now the introduction of Thrawn in Rebels and some of the stuff that is really coming to be on the show. So it's exciting. We'll see what happens. Maybe by then, Grogu will have said a couple of words and be on his own.
Yeah.
But
they're slowly warming us up to the idea of Grogu talking.
Yeah. Will he talk like Yoda or will he talk regular? Let's put some bets on there, chat. What do you guys think?
I'd say he's going to talk regular.
Yeah.
I think, that was, what they've told us in what is canon now is that Yoda just had an odd way of speaking. And we've seen Yaddle talks normal.
Right.
So I suspect it's going to be normal speech, but we'll see where they go with that.
Do you know what Yoda said when he saw himself up on a big screen in 4K?
No.
HDMI. It's one of my favorite Star Wars dad jokes. Awesome. All right. Any final thoughts then on these last two episodes? I think next week we are. I read somewhere that it was going to be a Filoni directed show, but what's his name just announced that he's going to be directing.
Yeah, Carl Weathers announced
Carl
that
Weathers.
Yeah,
it's one of his. Yeah,
which should be interesting, and it was titled "The Foundling," is what he's putting out there.
Right.
He may get in trouble for that. They haven't been dropping the titles ahead of time.
Yeah. But he's the director.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I don't know where they're going with that. I suspect we're going to fill in his story, what happened to him. I mean, that's been one of the biggest questions is
sure.
How did we get from the temple to where we are now? So
I'm excited to see yet another view of Order 66.
Yeah.
I always love Order 66. Yep. Excellent. Well, I want to thank everybody in the chat who joined us tonight on the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast, ScarifLive. If you just found us, please hit the subscribe and make sure that you follow my friend Andrew here at the Coruscant Radio Underground podcast. Name is up there on the screen. And let folks know what else you guys doing and where people can find you to say hello there.
As always, you can find both of our shows, Coruscant Radio Underground, which is our Star Wars show, and the Science Fictionary podcast, where we cover everything else. Pretty much at any of the podcatchers you would want to listen to it at. And then we're doing more and more content on YouTube. I'm really trying to get up to doing at least something short every day on the YouTube channel is what I'm trying to work up towards. So we're going to be doing a lot more over there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andrew. And both of our podcasts are part of the Red 5 Network. Check the rest of the content creators, wonderful folks, at red5network.com or go to bio.link/red5. This is Ro. That's Andrew. Chat. You guys are awesome. Thank you for joining us. And that is the Scuttlebutt.